Jocelyn, do you mind if I pick you?
No, it's fine.
Okay. B period, right? Okay. So, here we go. So Jocelyn has these notes, and as you see it upgraded right there, and as she can go back and look at all these and prepare and understand what went on in the book, you know, reading by reading. So that's really good for me and then for them too for review. The last thing I want to show you is Nearpod, which is sort of an enhanced PowerPoint, but you can do it in a nonlinear fashion. And this one is an upgraded Nearpod, but actually just think about it. The students could actually open up a Nearpod account and create a Nearpod. But in this one here, if you want to give them the Nearpods, I'll show you. I can use this to present, very interactive. I can bounce back and forth. With this upgraded one, I'll show you what more I can do. So this is just a quick one on some literary terms and Fahrenheit 451, which is the book we're reading. Now, the way I can do this is I can either swipe right here, and I go to the next one, and you just type your name in there somewhere. And as you can see, it'll come up. Now, you guys will not see that on yours, but I'll see that on mine. And sometimes what I'll have is an extra iPad so I can see what's being shown on theirs. And once you're there, one person is in. And if you see on the bottom here, right here, as I move it along, I can choose any one of these to start with. So after your names are in, I could start with a movie. Now, I haven't started the movie yet. I haven't shared the movie yet. When I'm ready to do that, I will. Let's just say I hit this share right near on the screen, right this here, and you will see a video. Now, usually what I do is I have them wear earbuds because sometimes the syncing is not perfect. Okay, so I'm going to stop that. You can see it's about like a minute. It's a minute-long movie about Fahrenheit 451. So I can go from that to this right here, and I can ask them to just quickly take this quick quiz, which will show up on yours but not mine. But as you can see, I will see the results on mine. And if I wanted to, I go to this Nearpod thing up top, and I can send a report to myself so that I can really actually use it as an evaluative assessing tool too. I can also have them do creative things like this. I can have them draw a symbol. And if somebody would just draw a symbol, I can share that on your Nearpod. It doesn't matter, just any symbol at all. And then when you guys hit submit, it'll come up on this screen right there. So I'll just submit Bob's. It's a very good one. And everybody will see on theirs. They won't know who it is because they'll say, so the whole class can kind of identify how does that symbolize blind to your ignorance. And also I can the students, I think they really like this. You guys are getting ahead. You're getting a sneak preview on a poll. Now, as you see right here, there has been no answers. The students, you will not see on yours until I share it. So I can wait for everybody to, as you can see, right here, you can see there are several answers, and I can hit this little arrow on the bottom and all the way, and they will decide what the answer is. And when I see that everybody's responded, then I can hit share, and you guys will see on the pie graph on yours is how the results came out. Now there's other videos, but there's other things I can do. I can have a question here, which I believe that you can type in. Is that true for this one? You can type in a response. And so just free text. And again, same thing, as soon as somebody's free text comes up, I can share it. So as you can see, we'll just wait a second if somebody wants to. As soon as you hit submit, it'll come through. Everybody's thoughtfully putting this down here. So basically, I'm in control of what's going on here. Okay, there we go. So we have Leah says match. We don't know it's Leah. I mean, you don't. I do. And I can always, there's another one right there. So people can see all the different responses. And then one other thing you can do with this enhanced one is I can open up I can send to you guys an internet link right there. I can also, if I want to, if somebody brings something up, I can send a link on the fly. So if I just put it in here, if somebody mentions something about Captain Beatty talking about sports, I can say, oh, do you want to talk about sports? And I just send you the link. No, I haven't sent it to you. I haven't shared it yet. But I can do that right now. And now it comes on your screen. Then I can close it whenever I want, end it right there, and we get back to this. So basically, this is some of the things that Nearpod can do. It's very interactive. It's great because you can put in videos, you can have polls, you can have questions, you can have links to websites that you want the kids to look at, and there are other things too. And also, I can again share things on the fly. I can give reports, and then my library is I go back to my presentations, and I have all these presentations I've been making, and we have been sharing this. So I want to show you what you can actually do. Yeah, right there. Mr. Hine put a presentation on this because this is a upgraded Nearpod, and he can publish it whenever he wants. And if you could just click on that right there, and I can clone, and this right there is a clone. Oh, you're gonna have to sign back in, so LRBMS. SILLY 1, 2, 3. So unlikely, isn't it? Great. And go down to the bottom where it says add, right? And as you can see, these are all the things that can be added. A slideshow. On another one, I took a PowerPoint and I put it on all these different books that show alternate realities, which is part of science fiction and commentary. Science fiction writers write science fiction for commentary on society, and they can, in their own pace, slide through all the slides on the show. So this is something that would be really good for Mr. Hine with science and everything. So this is a very powerful tool. I mean, it's a good tool to have interactive, and again, like I said, it's like a PowerPoint, but much more enhanced. Non-linear, a lot more things, a lot quicker, and it's right there on their iPad. So it's been very nice to use.
From an assessment view, I know the teachers have talked about with Nearpod, with getting your answers, teachers get a much more authentic view of how students understand the concept or not. Because oftentimes we think sort of the traditional way is the teachers at the front of the class, more amongst the class saying, does everyone understand? You get a lot of nodding, but do we really know? And students are reticent to raise their hand and say they're not sure, but you get a really authentic view right away. Do the kids really understand it or not? And when they do the polls, we can get the data extrapolated out to see how do they do on the quiz and start comparing period A to period D to period G, the first time lesson versus the last time lesson, to get a lot of data analysis and formative assessments, which really, a lot of these tools we could do it with PowerPoint, but we're not going to get the student interactive piece. And then so that attacks their organization and the communication between student and teacher and some collaborating. And I mean, I was in Cynthia's class last week, saw her using it. Seen it in science. It applies to a lot of the different classrooms, which is really nice. And the pilot has allowed us to really examine the apps in a very thoughtful way, because we have the beta group of the students. They're the commonality amongst all the 4 classes, and to see how they feel about it. And their input's been wonderful, because they've been very honest with us about what works and what doesn't. And their troubleshooting has been just immensely helpful for us. And finding apps and researching, I mean, the students know that I'll say, look at it. Like, you come up with some ideas and then come to us, and it's been wonderful. The other side benefit that I know, Jason, you mentioned about is, which I see a lot, is the excitement that's in place and a lot of the networking of the teachers. You'll hear the term of a professional learning network and the idea of doing that, and just there's a real sense of collaborating and sharing of ideas amongst the teachers, and that's just going to improve our education for the kids, without a doubt. And that's just an intangible, because I think I see them very invigorated. And it's not just about the iPad, it's just more about ideas. As you check this out, this has been the means to getting there, and getting the teachers staying very current through a lot of these technologies and sharing. It's been really, really fun at the cluster meetings and the meetings to hear them talk about what's working, what's not, and collaborating in that nature.
I have a question about the Nearpod. Are those sent simultaneously, so they have to take them as soon as you send them out? Or can, like, you say, I want everyone to do this like 8 o'clock tonight, and you send it to them and they can tap into it later?
Theoretically, I could be running the Nearpod, open it up, and send out an email or something, say, here's the code, and everybody could be at their own home and doing it. Yes, absolutely.
And I do believe there is a student-paced version Yes.
too. So
Yeah.
if they were to do it at home, it wouldn't be them dependent on how quickly Mr. Helshing sends it to them. They would be able to move at their own pace.
How long does it take to put a lesson together? I mean, you've been teaching English for a while, you know how to teach Fahrenheit 4. You know.
Well, actually, this is my first year teaching Fahrenheit 451, but I love the book, so I had a sort of insight into it. But I had the other English teachers who give me a lot of material, and one of them, some of these were PowerPoints, and you just take that PowerPoint, turn it into a PDF, and downloads it right onto the Nearpod. Then you can add those other polls and questions and throw in a video. So it does take some time, yeah. But
You don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Because a lot of teachers who have been
Right.
using PowerPoints that have spent years
Mm.
creating these nice PowerPoints with a ton of material and stuff. It takes seconds to go into a PDF, upload it, and then like you said, it's just adding all the interactive pieces and maybe shuffling something.
And how long does that take?
it takes a while, it does. And another thing is you can always improve upon it. Like I can clone that and say, I want to get rid of this, I want to move that, I can move the slides over, so you can always make it better. It doesn't like you have something you can't change it at all. But yeah, it does take.
With it. You know, at first, when I first started doing this, it took me a while because you're just learning the system. And then by the time you do your second or third with your PowerPoints, it starts going rock.
So like Quizlet, like any teachers from like any teacher across the United States who are using it, you can if their presentation is public, you can access it and then you can use it in your class. Is that how it works?
Yeah.
If you're in, TJ, if you're in Florida, you can, and I tell you what the code is, you can be on there.
Nice.
And I think that, to that point about the transition, about technology, reminds me a lot of when we switched to Windows 8. I mean, just a lot of that is that usability. It took a lot, but once it becomes ingrained. But it is a lot of legwork. I mean, I don't want to underestimate that and not express the amount of work that the teachers have done in that. And it's been a real collaborative effort. And I think the professional development has certainly helped a great deal. We know that's a big piece that we want to make sure keeping in play. But there's a nice contagion factor that's going about, too, is some of the other teachers in the school. And again, not just about the iPad, but just using those tools and thinking about how can that apply. And these have all been interactive with the students, but we do have a number of teachers that have iPads and just using them in a teacher-directed model. There's a real benefit to that, too. It has enhanced, so it's not just about that piece, but I think you can't undervalue the idea of teaching them how to use these tools as well and guiding that piece and the digital citizenry and the responsibility end. I have to give them a lot of credit. Students have been wonderful. I mean, we definitely had a lot of those fears of what's going to happen, and they've been, knock on wood, things have been just wonderful and very responsive to any troubleshooting. They've been just great about it. So,
Right, one more piece.
yeah, absolutely, Jim.
The only other thing I would say is that this presentation that we have to do is, trim down so we can make it as short as possible. We're only scratching the surface of what we can show you. We could spend hours showing you some of the stuff that we've done. And it opens, the creativity piece. The other day we were topping hydrogen in science. So what I found was a slow motion video capture and set up the iPad and captured the hydrogen exploding and was able to freeze it so the kids could see the flames shooting out of the test tube. So the opportunities or the opportunity to be creative, it's just endless. And like I said, this is just a tiny scratch on the surface of what we've done, and I think what's we're capable of doing.
I think also simply access to this technology makes me more willing to put in a lot of that hard work. This is going somewhere really good. I do the hard work anyway, but this makes me encourage me to say this is really great. I can use this over and over again. I have all these quizzes ready for vocabulary on a different app, and it just, it's really good. It's almost that time to say, I got to slow down. There's too many things I can do.
And, I mean, there have been some pitfalls. I mean, I think that's the legwork has been huge, and we're working through a lot of network issues that we know in connectivity. The kids will talk about that. That's a frustration that we know is in place, but we have to work that out. I mean, that's a reality piece. We have to do that. So the pilot has been great in that structure to allow us to really test those pieces. What does that look like when we have that many devices in a room? Now that we have 80 devices going on, what does that look like? I know it's helped Owen and Carlos and the tech team on that end, and that's something that we really want to make sure is in place. So there have been some challenges that we have to make sure we're working out, but being open to it is important.
Especially with Nearpod, I feel like it's easier for us to learn because like the people who don't normally participate in class, it's
Absolutely. So one of the pieces too, that the teachers had training that started in the summer through ed tech teacher that we've worked with, and we worked with all last year through on a wider professional development piece through technology. So these teachers, and Diane and Neil, have been a core group of getting trained, and they have webinars throughout the year. They have on-site visits where Greg Cloak comes from ed tech teacher and works with them, but also just the ongoing professional development that they have. They're very open to just questions, whether it's through Twitter, email, just very responsive to what our needs have been, and really networking out to say, anyone have an idea about how to use this or an app in that way? And that really is professional development, because it's just getting those ideas going. So that's been in place. The structures we have at the middle school, we do have our cluster meetings, and that they're established. So every Friday has been sort of our dedicated time that the team gets together to really talk about the pilot in that nature, and that's been really important. And again, I think it's a testament to, we're very fortunate, and we know that the model at Blake is that the middle school can be an expensive model to get those times, but this is what we're really using it in the nature of what it should be used for. This is discussing student work, discussing how we can make it better, and to troubleshoot. That PD's been in place. Diane and Neil have done a lot of good work kind of sharing the ideas and getting that, and I think the teachers know that whatever move we move in the direction is, they're going to be a big piece of that professional development as well, as teacher leaders in this area, and sharing that. So that's important, and we know that that's the critical piece. I think in some ways, the teachers here it's a wide range too of their skill. And I think they'll say that some of them are very fast with technology, others not as much. And that's important, because we know that's the reality if we extrapolate in any way we're moving forward. So we want to make sure that that's in place in that training for the staff. Any other questions for the teachers or the
Do you have any
students?
concerns about staff members that might not, this cluster obviously had to apply, they made
Yep.
a commitment to invest the time and energy into this. You anticipate that there'll be people who just don't view it as productive time?
Yeah, I mean, change is hard, and I think there are. I think that's a lot of work that we're really thinking about how we do that, and how we kind of spread the good word in a sense. And I think that's going to be an administrative challenge. I don't think it's going to be a pervasive feel. I think a lot of that change comes from insecurity and that unknown. And I don't mean that at all in a negative manner at all, but I think it really is. Change is hard because we're unsure about what that looks like. And what will that mean for me if I'm troubleshooting? I think modeling what we've done a lot is really engaging the students, engaging each other, and allowing that, and sort of from the administrative view, giving the permission to not have it work, which is no different than trying a new concept. I mean, Seth taught English this year. This is his first time teaching it. I mean, whether he was using this or not, there were going to be mistakes that'll be had, and that's okay. We just got to kind of work it through. So I think making sure that we're establishing that culture, and if there are people that are more hesitant, we have to engage in that discussion to say, well, if this is the direction we're going, this is what we need, and what do you need from us? And that's, I think, to that point of professional development. If that's in place, hopefully that will address it. And I think some of the teachers, I mean, Cynthia, I don't want to single you out, but she'll be the first.
I'm the technically challenged person of the group.
Not.
No, it's true. My phone is like the old envy. Like, I didn't touch any of this before. They handed this thing to me. I took it home to my 8-year-old and asked her to turn it on for me. And so the first thing she did was like take pictures. But on my end, as someone who 5 years teaching a curriculum, all of a sudden had to put it into all the work I've already done. Professional-wise, someone like Seth, like I just saw what he did with the folders, and we're setting up a time to meet where he can show me how to do that. I feel like that even if there are some teachers that struggle with that, we work so well together at Blake that you kind of get supported by the teachers that are. They grab you, like the website I have with Weebly, like literally Travis and Jason said, no, let's do it now, sit down with me, and they get you over that hump. So I'm not really worried about the teachers that, like myself, who are rather use it as a paperweight. Eventually, like now going back, I can't imagine not teaching with this. Like they said next year I couldn't have this, so it would be very sad. And that's a big jump from when I walked in August.
I remember.
Going, I didn't even know where the on button was on it. So.
I know of a teacher who's really worried about using technology. 3 years ago, they were scared to death, and I watch them now using different technologies. I'm very proud of it. So I think it's that comfort level. I'm still on that comfort level, but once I feel comfortable with something that I just get into it and I use it more. So it takes a while for some, but once they do it and they're proud of what they're doing, they feel more comfortable. They start going.
Are you finding that you're spending time teaching technology versus the curriculum, or the students are right there with you and you can just pick it up? I think they're ahead of me.
of you,
Yeah. So, yeah, usually they're helping me out and, coasting me through when I'm having issues, and they're great for troubleshooting. Like I said, it's just a learning curve. Like, yes, my first time I do lessons, I probably spend a ton of time, but that's because I don't know exactly how to work it. As soon as I figure things out, it just goes faster as the year has gone on.
I've seen skill from students too that I didn't expect that to come out of this, and that's, all of us these days have to learn how to troubleshoot technology.
And adapt.
And they now are at the point where the first day, it's not working, here, take it, I can't do it. Now they're at the point where they know they can, in their mind, there's a hierarchy, okay, what's step one to solve this, step two, step three, that didn't work, go to step five, it's just a process, and they've learned that process.
And helping one another
Yes.
too. I mean, I think that's a thing, seeing, and that's not change over the culture that we have for the students in Medfield, of that collaborative helping piece, but seeing that, and I would just echo that. I think a lot of it's sort of redefining and re-clarifying skills that we have to make sure that we're educating students how to do. I mean, we've always had to teach students how to troubleshoot, but this is their world. They're going to be using these aspects, so let's try to teach them in a thoughtful manner how to engage in that in a productive manner. And whether an iPad, a Google Chrome, a laptop, those skills that Jason was just talking about can be transferred to any type of technology tool. If you're learning how to program or set up an Xbox at home or something, how do we do that with the directions we have or without directions? And I think we'll slow down. There's a better way to do this. And oftentimes they're showing us a better way to do it too.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
With technology, I think there's a certain isolative factor that kids, no one sees my answer, I don't have to collaborate, and I think just seeing kids now when everyone's on their phone, everyone sits there, no one's interacting or making eye contact when you're sharing with other students or other people, that how are you gonna address that? It seems like I love the idea, I wish I was an 8th grader. And it's so exciting, but how do you address that portion of it, that people need to be able to interact and speak with other kids and interact with their teachers, and not just over sending something over
I
another
can speak to
device?
that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you're totally right, and I think you can't forget that the kids working together is face to face is the most important thing. So there are days, and we haven't changed anything we've done in our curriculum. We're not doing these My Science classes, the same thing they're doing in the other two clusters. So we're paralleling each other. We have the iPad, but there's still days when I say, turn the iPad over. We're doing a lab today. We are not touching technology. We don't need it, and there's not really a purpose for it for this activity. And we're still doing the traditional hands-on labs. There are other times, like I said, where we're videotape a lab and enhance it, but there's still, I think you make a great point. We still need to make sure that we have a balance, and we find that balance between using technology and not letting technology take over everything.
That's exactly what I was thinking, because when you said I'm watching the hydrogen, and I'm thinking, if you're, I don't think there are too many things that can replace that hands-on, touching something, talking with people, so.
Yeah, I mean, the word that was coming to mind was the same thing as Jason, is balance. I think it's critical that we need to teach students how to communicate with one another. You can't just message the teacher. That oftentimes, I mean, that's, educating all of us about have a conversation with the teacher. It's going to be much better. If you have a question, you got to do that. Extra help still is one-on-one with the teacher. And I think collaborating, allowing that time to discuss, and these tools can enhance that. They're not the be-all, end-all either. There are days where you flip that iPad over and we need to talk for a little bit, or present in this manner. Cynthia, I know, because when we did one of the parent presentations, because that's one of the things that we've been doing is engaging the parents in discussion, and we've done 2 sort of chats where they come on in and talk. We did one at night with a little bit of a presentation, and that was one of the parents asked that same question, saying, I don't want my child to be a robot. I don't want them hiding behind a screen and just being an automaton. And Cynthia talked about that. In some ways, that's true. Some of the pieces has allowed students to interact more as opposed to a teacher just lecturing, because that can be even more passive. But now we're engaging in that manner, engaging in a different way. But I don't think we should just kind of hang our hat on that and say, well, okay, so we're collaborating. We still have to make sure we're doing what we're doing right now. I think it's important that our students are able to interact with you right now, and to talk and to kind of troubleshoot and to really let's discuss what we're discussing, not just online, but maybe doing that to enhance, so when we talk online, we're more informed for that.
Can you actually talk about maybe a few things that you've done that actually have enhanced student collaborative work?
The Nearpod to me does, because I'm pushing out things that some students have, how they've answered, or they can compare their answers. They see the pie graph, they see the drawing and what it means. They can have a discussion around that. They can go on to a link that I give them for a network, and they can talk about that. The notebooks that they have for Evernote, when they're in class and they're doing their summaries, they can talk to each other about what's on there. And there's two ways for them to summarize. They can type it or they can talk into it. So it's the verbal learning. They're using their voice to understand what they're saying. So they can, in that way, they can collaborate in small groups, or we can collaborate as a full class. So that's one way that is enhanced.
How about, are you familiar with anyone using Wiki or using, say, a voice thread where actually the kids collaborate on the project and then spend time actually providing feedback to each other on the work they produce?
I did do a voice thread. It wasn't collaborative, but I have actually, we're moving into the Renaissance, and they're going to learn about particular individuals like Queen Elizabeth, and I've set up Explain Everything, where they're going to work in groups of 3, and they're going to pull pictures around a dinner table, and then they're going to make a seating chart, and then together they're going to explain why the particular Renaissance people are going to sit where they're going to sit. And then, Trav may think that Queen Elizabeth and Queen Isabella should sit together, and he'll explain why. But Leah may say, well, actually, I think, Queen Elizabeth would like to sit next to Leonardo da Vinci because Queen Elizabeth loves different languages. And then we're going to share the groups together in front of the class. So they'll collaborate on that information that they have and then, share it. And I just find in my classroom, they are talking more. As interesting as I think I am when I'm standing in lecturing, there does sometimes a gloss over happens, and I've seen the opposite with these iPads. I'm seeing they're more engaged, like with these Nearpods. They're discussing these things as we're bringing up these slides, and in many ways it's really great. I'm kind of seeing the opposite of the disengagement, more engagement, definitely in social studies.
And kind of raising the bar is what I see too. If you're in a class and a student, I come around the room and I go, oh, let's project your work. So your iPad, we throw it up onto the Epson projector. Everybody just sees what student Y did and demonstrates it. Now you have all these other students go, whoa, look at what a great idea there. I'm going to take their ideas and take that to the next level. So it keeps raising the bar for students depending on what you're doing.
I think when we think of what you were concerned about, primarily it's the whole notion of kids, being at home or being with their device, and it's kind of that one-on-one, communication that, you're texting someone, there's that fixation, the fascination with, the device in that one-on-one communication. And I think the example that you heard is more about then what is the structure that the teachers create in the environment that then fosters the kind of collaboration that actually is well beyond what you might see sometimes in the traditional classroom where it's more of a lecture, type of environment. I've seen some very good things that have been done with teachers, posting in a wiki format, just student writing, and then opening up the opportunity for others, and really having the requirement that, you have to give real feedback to your peers, or voice thread, which is not an app, but a web 2.0 tool, which actually has a built-in feature that fosters collaboration. So you get more of I think, a potential with the use of the device to actually create that structure that causes more student activity and stuff. The teacher over at Westwood that did this for you was like a 6th grade teacher. Maybe a year and a half ago, he presented to a superintendent's group. And he actually, for the first time, actually set up this wiki idea where he, posted the students' writing and gave the kids the assignment that, they had to respond to the other students' writing with some positive suggestions and stuff. And he was used to the idea of giving the writing assignment, collecting it, making comments himself, and then giving it back to the kid. And he said he ended up waking up the next day and there were over 300 comments from one class. you know, where the kids really, just because of that, you know, structure, you know, were very much, you know, into the whole idea of, you know, writing to each other. And it kind of turns on its head, you know, what we think of the things that students will sometimes put on YouTube, you know, to get the bazillion hits on it, and it has kind of a negative effect. Well, you kind of turn that into the positive, you know, kids really do many times want to, you know, show, you know, the quality. And, you know, it can be a pretty positive and interactive experience, I think, compared to that, the concern I think that you have that's legitimate.
Yeah.
You know, it just is, it's not structured. So that's where it's really important for the structure and the training of the teachers and how they design those activities.
I think, I mean, the other piece, I mean, part of it too is, you know, Jason said, it's vast, how far we want to go. And we've really tried to bring it back, so we're not just opening up to every app, because we want to make sure that we're thoughtfully examining what we're doing too, because it could just run away from us. And I think we want to be measured about what we're assessing, because I think there's so many other apps or programs that we could enhance in doing that. But we want to make sure that we're doing it in a thoughtful manner and how we're assessing, because that, to that point also, if we are going to expand to the wider staff, it can't be too vast. It's got to be measured and incremental, kind of, if we're in that point, kind of bringing, you know, the teachers back to like Cynthia's perspective back in August. Where were you? Because where they're now is much further beyond. I give them credit for that in that structure. The other piece too is just viewing assistive technology in special education, that there are a lot of ways it's been able to allow us to accommodate for students' needs on every end, to challenge and to nurture students that need it. And I think that's a realm that there's a lot of potential for us to do that, which is very important to us. So we want to make sure that we're individualizing student work as well. And I think these tools can allow us to do that. But I think broadening that scope of assistive technology is assistive for all of us. I mean, I use my iPad, I use my laptop, I use my iPhone, and it's assisting me, and that's a good thing. And not putting it in that context of, oh, it comes from a sense of deficiency. It's not. Hopefully it's enhancement that's going to tap into different aspects. So keeping that lens as we're looking at it. So.
How are the units holding up 4 months in?
Great.
Oh,
Great.
Great, amazing.
Great. Yeah.
Okay, I don't want
You
to.
mean how the iPads?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
You know, amazing.
I mean, I know
Had
this is
one
pretty much
broke-
Kevlar, but I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's right. I mean, we'll say that.
We haven't had one broken iPad.
No.
I think the worst I heard was a student had their headphones in and they broke
The flap.
the thing. No,
Yeah.
they actually broke the metal piece off in it and it came to the next exit, it fell out. So that, we've been really lucky.
They've been durable.
Students have been very responsible too.
And I've
We have to
heard
give them
the
the credit.
From the classroom, on the desk, you know, bam, hits the ground, and then nothing's, no damage.
Is there something that goes over the screen or?
Yes.
That's part of the case.
Right.
Yeah.
You put Windex on it, it doesn't move the screen.
There's a lot of nice features in that case too, and the camera has a rubber piece, as long as they didn't pull it off, that blocks the camera. So teachers, or if we can make sure that that's covered, we know that they're not taking pictures or using the video when they shouldn't be using it. And I think that's a nice comfort thing when kids got their iPad up and it looks like their own thing, that they're not videotaping something that they shouldn't.
You know, it's also not, it's a communications tool, it's a collaboration tool, but it's also a good studying tool. For vocabulary, for English, they go into Quizlet, and I didn't even have to create these. I found them from somebody else who created them. Every single word in the vocabulary book we used, all of them broken down by units and then combined units, and they can go through all of them and study, you know, as much as they want. They can do that on a regular computer, but they can also do this here, be portable and do this here, on here. So it's good for that too.
And the nice thing about the pilot has been the ability to kind of test out those concerns, you know, so, you know, I think we all entered it saying, okay, you know, how are these gonna be cared for, you know, and, you know, that's really been a non-issue. We've been concerned about, you know, safety and security, you know, where the kids are gonna do a bunch of things that, you know, are just gonna be inappropriate. And, you know, we really covered all of those issues, and, you know, I think generally, you know, our sense from the pilot is we've been able to kind of test out, you know, some of the things and get real experience from it.
I think engaging the parents in those conversations as well too, because there was a gamut of the parental expectation and nerves about what's going on at home and their freedom and accessibility to network, and really that's going to be an issue whether we're using the iPad pilot or not. So it's been actually a real opportunity for us to work with the parents, which is one of our ultimate goals. Is we want to make sure that we're, you know, breaking down that wall of the front door is We've got to be collaborating with the parents in this endeavor, and that's been some of the communication that we've had, is saying, hey, we think that this may be an issue. Talk to your students about this tonight. Let us know, call us. And Owen's gotten direct calls from parents about some questions, and that's just been a really nice feature about, these are our students together collectively, and we have the same care in mind. Let's talk about that. And that's a conversation that this has allowed us to have that, and it's a concern whether we're doing the iPad pilot or not, because they're digital citizens. I mean, that's really what their reality is. So let's teach how to do that and engage parents in that and to educate them. I think that's something that we know too, is that's a piece looking for, that we know that parents need education. So we want to make sure we're doing that as well and engaging them in that process and having the students help be part of that. It gives them a leadership voice too, which is immensely important, getting to those collaboration skills, allowing them opportunities to talk to you tonight. And that way, that's a collaborating skill that we want to make sure our students have that ability when they leave Blake and go to Medfield High and leave Medfield High and move on. It's important. Any other questions?
Have you seen that it has provided some of the kids who might need more of a challenge from like the norm curriculum, a chance to kind of challenge themselves so that there's
I'm going to look to
more
the teachers.
opportunity for that?
I really think it's back to that, what I was talking about, raising the bar.
Yeah.
Because one student, when I show what one student can do, which I've gone around the room and decided this is one of the top ones, it really takes, all the kids, they're competitive by nature, and they want to make theirs the best. They want to be the one that the teacher chooses and puts up there. So, and I've seen them do stuff that is so outside the box of what I was thinking that I'm amazed, and I use that to take on to the next class and the next class, depending on what it is. It really is amazing what they've taught us as we've been working through this pilot. And they have some amazing ideas, and they really do think outside the box.
I think it also provides opportunities to differentiate, which is something that's really important, which with us not even consciously thinking about it, because I think, in a traditional lab report where we're all doing this one lab, there's opportunities for kids to do multiple labs, and you can differentiate in that manner, and sometimes students may be aware, sometimes not, and that's an important thing to think about in the class dynamics and how that works, and to individualize some aspects. So I think that there's a lot of potential for that, and I think part of those questions is important for us to think about that. Okay, how can we do this and allow them to differentiate on their own coming to us, but also we can intentionally do that too. So.
I don't know if I want to speak too much for the kids, but I think it helps them organize too. And just the fact that they have this organization tool allows them to then use their higher order thinking a little bit more without having to worry about where do I leave this or where's this going. They have it right there, it's all organized, and they can go on to other things because they don't have to worry about that aspect of it. So I think in a way that's very helpful for them, just to raise the bar individually.
Having a tool there, like you said, if there's a student that obviously has grasped what you're doing, it's great to be able to say, hey, I've got this real life example, and throw something at them. We were doing something where I said, okay, I'm taking this trip. Go ahead and figure out how much gas it's going to take. And they just opened up the iPad and typed in the addresses and figured out the mileage and then researched the car and did all this research, and within like 20 minutes we had this whole plan of what it would cost to drive from one place to the other. And we actually ended up making a whole project out of it. But that was an example that you were talking about, where the student had really mastered what we were doing and needed a little bit more in that time. And I could pull that right there at that moment.
And that's an authentic learning. I mean, that's real. That's something that we'll all encounter. So the more we can do that's very important. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks to the students and the teachers too. So thank you.
You can see the thoughtfulness that went into them. So, in a real simple way, those devices are connected to a device that is relatively inexpensive. I think it's about $100 device. That's a TV, it's called, which actually a bunch of people probably don't use at homes. And it allows that kind of video switching that was going on. So literally, when you go into one of the middle school classrooms in the cluster, they literally can carry on a very fluid conversation and have different kids' screens instantaneously going up, and the teacher screen instantaneously going up. So it really is a very nice setup in terms of infrastructure. That was pretty powerful. In terms of the budget, again, I just want to make some general comments and then maybe relate specifically to a couple of the items in here, related, the technology as being one of them. The budget increase, as it stands today, that I'm recommending to the school committee is $927,326 increase, which is about 3.38%. When you look at the budget, from kind of, the global view, about $860,000 of that increase is related to existing personnel costs moving forward. And it kind of defines kind of an ongoing issue that we've dealt with, for a good number of years. Is that the structure of being 80% personnel and the nature of trying to manage through those overhead costs really is largely what we're dealing with here. When you look at the other amounts of dollars that make up that total expenditure, about roughly $60,000 is non-salary related shifts. And certainly one of the increase that's in the budget is related to what we're talking about in terms of this pilot expansion and its PD costs. Right? One of the things clearly that I think you would have come away from this conversation understanding is the amount of time and effort that the staff has to put into, not just understanding the technology, but really being artful about how they organize instruction, to make this meaningful. And there are many school districts out there that are buying technology and not doing that piece. And I think it's critical that's where, the dollars be invested to do as well. Then there's another roughly, really just $5,000 or $6,000 that are related to the in and out staff changes that are either reductions that are occurring because of enrollment decline or additions that are related to the ongoing initiatives that we've had primarily in language program development. But in terms of technology, specifically, what we're talking about is, Matt mentioned, is about 80 students this year in one cluster in the 8th grade that are involved in this pilot. The equipment for that pilot was purchased through the school budget. We have received some outside support from the coalition to help us with some of the training costs of the pilot. One of the things clearly, I think, that's, because of the structural issues that we're facing, I've become more convinced that the ongoing issue of trying to put an appropriate amount of technology infused into the school department, really to support what we're talking about here, structurally, it's a problem in terms of the ongoing cost that will be necessary to do this, not just the initial cost. And you do find some school districts out there, the town I live in being one of them, they built a new high school, they got technology money, it's kind of found money, let's get everyone an iPad. With maybe not the kind of thoughtful, support that you may need. So here and there you'll find districts that, have these found opportunities where, the dollar influx is there that allows you to make, the initial widespread purposeful purchase. But the problem is that that's an ongoing recurring cost. So it's not just the one-time purchase, it's how do you sustain it over time. So, fundamentally, one of the things that I'm talking about in this budget is the idea that we would find a way to transfer that cost of the device to the family. And so that's a fundamental assumption that's in this, is that the school district will still have, the ongoing cost that's related to the infrastructure, that's support staff, the personnel cost, as well as the PD cost, but that we would look at trying to develop really a partnership with families around the device use, which is, very common at the college level for a good number of years now. It's been, probably well more than a decade that's been the situation there. And that, we know right now from the surveying that we're doing that a good amount of kids do have mobile devices presently. So we know that there's a certain level, and one of the highest levels of kind of penetration is iPad-like devices. So, and even some of the first questioning that we did with some of that surveying, we asked some questions about, would you be interested in, if we had some sort of a plan that, would allow that. And we actually got a fair amount of positive response to that people would be. And then there actually was some clarification. We didn't ask the question real well, because there were a bunch of people that came back and said, well, we already have devices. So my answer would be no to your question, but, I'm saying no, not because I wouldn't be interested, but, not that I'm not conceptually interested in it, but I really don't need it right now because, we have our own device. And we've been talking with, Apple. I've had several meetings over, telephone conferences with them. The last one as recently as this past week, where they are in the process of rolling out some new programming where they actually will work with the districts to provide people that they will work with in this program, where they will do the price point at the educator discount level. So it actually improves the price point. And then they'll actually work to structure the potential for a lease program. And there was an article, I don't know if any of you saw it below, about a week ago, Wellesley with their 5th grade is actually copying our idea. Basically they had information in the paper where they actually talked about an annual lease cost of about $151. Now, I haven't gotten to the point where we've actually priced it out, but that certainly takes it from the $600 and something iPad cost down to something that might be more manageable in terms of cost. The other thing that we're looking at right now is the new iPad Mini. The iPad Mini now is, I think, in the range of about $350. And again, we could look to see if we could structure something that, again, might be a multiple year lease to purchase program that would bring those numbers down even more considerable. The parents that I'm interacting with this are not giving me a lot of negative feedback. Again, I'm dealing with some smaller groups, and that's been dealing with some larger groups, but I have not been getting from the people that I've been interacting with, a complete, you're kidding me, kind of response.
We talked, I think it was maybe the budget subcommittee talked about the possibility of multiple platforms, whether the Kindle, you could get on with the Kindle Fire. Or
yeah, I mean, right now what we're proposing in the way we're structuring this is in the 8th grade that we would make it an iPad pilot. Right now, the other pilot that we're talking about would be in 9th grade, and we would, in that pilot, look at the idea of what's called BYOD, or Bring Your Own Device, which would allow really for a lot more flexibility. It could be a laptop that would come in the door, or it could be some non-iPad or Apple devices. The conversations that I've been having with Apple on kind of that purchasing program, the only way they kind of engage with us on it is if we really were pretty exclusive on the purchasing plan to the Apple kind of array of devices, which I don't think is the worst thing. I mean, we have looked at through this, and this is one of the problems that you get into is the grand debate about which device. And certainly what we've seen to date is that each of the devices has certain limitations. There's no doubt that I can regale you with a lot of that. The reason that we're looking in the 8th grade at making an Apple-only environment is really because of this stack here, right? Because this is one of the other things I want to talk to you about in the pilot, right? This is one grade's worth of books, okay, at the middle school right now, right? That backpack that we're all talking about that the kids have that go back and forth every single day is, right here. And one of the things that we're looking at in the iPad pilot is the notion of making this disappear. Okay, to actually take not necessarily this material, okay, because despite a lot of effort to have conversations with the people that write these things, we really haven't found any practical or cost-effective solution that actually takes this particular material and cost-effectively, puts it onto the machine. But conceptually, what we're looking at is the idea of, in that pilot, actually having this, or what would be equivalent to it in terms of the learning materials, go into the device, which I think is a huge part of, this. And it's not just from the form factor, right? I'm making the dramatic push by having the form factor here to you, and I think it is important. From the surveys that we got from the parent, that was a pretty prevalent question that came from parents, because they see, kind of the ludicrous problem here that we all have been talking about for decades. And we know that, the ability for these devices to, in comparison, in a really, small form factor, be much more efficient is valuable. But the kinds of things that we're looking at is, from the point of view of cost, also. So just internally in our budget, I actually sat down and internally, we took a look at costs that are related to paper, costs that are related to copy machines, costs that are related to the toner and to the ink cartridges, etc., and the ongoing annual cost at the secondary level for textbook acquisition. Right now, we're easily achieving about $100,000 a year in total expenditure. The bulk of that, probably $60,000, $70,000, depending on the given year, is related actually not to the textbook. So simply paper, copier maintenance, ongoing cost related to that, and the toner cost, is somewhere in the neighborhood of $60,000, $70,000. Now, right now, and for a long time, it's been kind of a regular, needed thing that exists in the environment. But just as you heard the kids talking about, and the teachers talking about, the amount of paper that they're not using, right? The ability to be organized, being able to electronically pass the assignments back and forth. We've done that in small ways in the school department, in the recent past with, the elimination of the hand copied, memos that went out in the Thursday packets, and all of those becoming electronic. The amount of copying, the amount of paper use that generally is going on in schools is a necessary thing right now, but when you think of it as an expenditure of value for the quality of education, it just doesn't make sense. And I believe that in the long run, one of the outcomes of being able to move forward with this experiment will be whether or not we actually can achieve becoming paperless with the students and the teachers. Can we actually achieve that? Could we eliminate the cost of paper? Could we eliminate the cost of copiers? Could we eliminate the ongoing cost for textbook acquisition? Now, it's not a simple, the cost is gone, because obviously we've got to do something that gets us to the point where we can organize this. But we know that people are doing it right now. Burlington High School, where they've been pretty thoughtful about what they've been rolling out with mobile devices with kids. Every kid in high school right now in Burlington has a mobile device. They're expanding that to every kid in middle school right now as the mid-year is hitting. They actually have achieved quite a bit of savings, or transferring that expenditure into something that's actually meaningful and improves education. They're working with a company that we've been talking about quite a bit, which is called NetText, which basically allows you through software to go out and capture what's considered open resource materials on the internet. So a real simple example of that, if you want to look at it tonight, is go online and look at Khan Academy, K-A-H-N, and you will find an array of very well done, very high quality, totally free learning instructional activities for kids that can serve as a textbook. There's another organization out there that's called CK12 that, again, is all open resource. If you've been paying attention to the news lately, MIT, Harvard, they've just signed on with Georgetown. I actually saw someone at a Friday night basketball game who works at Wellesley. She told me that Wellesley has signed on to the open resource project that's happening at the college level, where basically all of these universities are making their curriculum available online for free. Very high quality, materials that are out there. So I believe that in this pilot next year, we're going to have a real solid opportunity to actually do an experiment to see if we can in fact achieve that.
So for next year, you propose all the ninth graders have a device?
Yeah, the ninth grade one, Robert's still in the middle of finalizing with the staff at the high school, what that will look like. The conversation to date has been ninth grade. Some kind of BYOD pilot that would surround ninth grade.
And some of those kids are in this pilot.
Well,
So
these
they're
eighth graders would be ninth graders next
so
year,
that's
and,
what I'm
would,
saying.
so it has some sense in terms of that. It has some sense in terms of, again, part of the reason why I looked to the middle school and talked with Nat originally about the center of this pilot was the ability to kind of connect the teachers and kind of make that a powerful part of having success. The ninth grade lends itself to that to some degree, not necessarily as simply as the cluster model at the middle school, but the Common Core classes that the kids tend to take at ninth grade level is much less an array of wide spread number of classes that are further up the chain as you get to the 11th, 12th grade.
And then what do you propose at the middle school for next year?
The middle school really would be an expansion of the pilot in grade 8. I mean, in my vision, I'd like to see it be everybody. I think, we're in the process right now of rolling out this conversation with you folks. I've begun doing it with some of the different groups that I meet, and Nat's doing it. So some of this it's again this whole notion of this partnership, that needs to be accepted in this. The one thing that we are being cognizant about is equity in this, because we are talking about funds, and we do have as a basis of an ability to deal with that the 80-odd machines that we have in our position that we own right now, so that if someone, through the process that we would set up in this, were to come forward and express a concern about cost, we'd have a supply that, would be available that, would not preclude, someone from being involved. That's very, very important to me in the conversations that we've had.
And what's the incremental difference in cost between rolling it out for all the eighth grade clusters or rolling it out for all the middle school classrooms? It's really a difference in professional development costs. That's really.
Yeah, I think that's that's what our and the other thing I'd say to you is that again I think we've been really good at trying to be thoughtful about this and do it in incremental steps that lead to success versus we're going to do everybody and and then all of a sudden you're dealing with some issues that you don't anticipate. A third pilot that we're having some discussions about, but it's not in the can. I mentioned it before. Is that the company NetTex, who again we haven't hitched our wagons there. We're still looking at a lot of different possibilities. They just have been working with Google, and there's some discussion with them about the possibility of an Android-based device, and we had some conversation about if that comes to fruition, that we would look at that at the middle school, perhaps in grade 6. But that's really kind of not there yet and in our control. So, even just with, say the whole 9th grade was done, say the whole 8th grade was done, you're talking about, 500 users plus, another couple of hundred, that are presently on the network. So we'd be in the range of, going from just, a couple of years ago, 0 in a wireless environment to, 700 users. So, we definitely are all, we're pretty much constantly right now in a lot of communication about network capabilities. You heard Nat talk about that being a little bit of a problematic issue that we struggle with here and there right now. A lot of it is attention that's going on between how do we control the network, right? And we have been, for the most part, pretty conservative in that to date. We're actually, right now, in a discussion about doing, within the pilot group, a shift to a more free environment in the month of February.
Yeah.
So there's been conversation about that. So, I think part of it is to be incrementally growing and really looking at these as pilots. Again, I'm not 100% convinced that, in the long term, at the upper secondary level, that this may be absolutely, the best advice. I mean, we've been having a lot of conversations with some folks about, would you perhaps be better off with a laptop? Particularly at the, 11th, 12th grade level, there may be more of a benefit, to that than you might see from, the purpose of what you use this device with younger kids. But the reason, I would say in the 8th grade, that this device, we think right now lends itself to being selected is its ability to deal with what is this part of the pilot. So, I've been talking to folks a lot about their iTunes U materials that are available out there that are pretty impressive. They have an iBooks feature for writing and publishing your own material. It's free. That exists, on the iPad and is really good quality. And NetText right now at this stage really is only available on this device, and that's one of the partners that we're talking about very seriously. And again, they're doing some pretty good stuff up in Burlington. NetText in its vision really is a software app that allows you to reside the materials in a text-like environment on the iPad. And it's creating a network among school districts. So there's a group of school districts that they originally were working with that are private schools, that were middle schools in the Atlanta, Georgia area that have been using this now for 2 years. There's a series of schools down in New Jersey that they've been working with. They now are working with some bigger districts, Amarillo, Texas, and Burlington. Burlington's, a larger district than us. And what happens is as the text materials get written, they're there and they're available. So in the same way that Seth was talking about, his Nearpod, being able to be cloned, you can literally do that with the text materials that are being built and available, by the different districts. So, if I see a history course that has been built by, a school in Atlanta, I can clone that under this open resources copyright law that exists and how the materials are released, and I can use that, and then I can modify it the way I might want to do it. So some of the cost that's there around PD in this budget is around supporting that curriculum writing, because the idea, in the same way that we don't look at the idea of we would just hand the teachers the iPads and say, go do it. We don't want to be able to, we don't want to be in a position of basically saying to them, okay, well, these books are going away, go do that. We fundamentally understand very, much from the beginning that we're going to have to support that if it's actually going to happen with quality. Because again, if you overwhelm the staff with this, it's not going to be possible. But if you look at it as a function of your budget and, a cost factor, and then you look at what is actually possible out there, it's an experiment worth having, from my view. It's a big part of what the device could also leverage.
So do they have the 8? How much memory do you have? The 8 gigs or the?
We bought 32s. We're actually having some debate now whether or not that was needed. We're actually having some conversations. I mean, one of the things that I think in the conversations that Matt and I have been in recently has been, I think we're being open to existing other. This was the second version of the iPad. I think this was the iPad 2. One of the parents that was in one of the meetings with me said, well, what about, my iPad 1? Can that come in? And we've been having that conversation. I think we're going to be open to that. I think we're going to be open to the idea of the mini You know, other than the screen size, there isn't really a heck of a lot of difference, you know, and as much as, you know, again, I kind of don't feel like I do well with the keyboard, we're not seeing the kids have a lot of issues. I mean, we actually don't see a lot of problem with it. They're pretty facile, you know, with whether it's been, you know, their smartphones or whatever, you know, I just don't do as well. The same thing with the screen size. We're finding that the kids, you know, things that we may be concerned about as adults may not be prevalent with students.
Have you looked into getting some kind of like stylus? I was wondering, I noticed how they wrote with their finger. Like I feel like for me personally, if I'm writing something down, I don't want to be doing with my finger the whole entire time. Like I see.
I use one too.
Because I know we just got one. Miss Safer for her classroom got the Apple TV, and she just purchased her own, and it seemed to work a little better. I definitely see that interactive part with typing involving the class with PowerPoints or any interactive things, but I think that writing-wise, I feel like I might want something to write with.
Yeah, again, with the students, you know, we probably would take the approach that that would be a decision. I mean, one of the interesting things we learned from Burlington, you know, we were very concerned about where the machine's going to get damaged, to the point where we did buy the, you know, ballistic proof, you know, case that you observed. I mean, they literally went out and bought the most heavy-duty one, you know, we could find to put on them. Burlington, actually, because we've actually visited there now, we spent a lot of time talking to them, they actually said, you know, we made the decision not to do that. Because the kids actually decided that they'd probably like to go out and buy the one that they wanted. And, you know, they would go out and get them, they would get one that would be in the color combination they wanted and everything else, and it was actually a significant savings. You know, when you actually look at the cost of, you know, the case, it was actually not inexpensive, because we did buy, you know, we were really worried going into this that these things were, you know, gonna have cracked screens and gonna have issues, which, again, we've had none of.
Right, but if your kids are getting their own, they're gonna end up with cracked screens, with the regular, any of the regular covers don't protect really well.
Burlington doesn't have a problem. You know, that, and again, this is kind of, it was a surprise to us. I mean, we came away, you know, we ended it with a certain thing, you know, and, you know, again, you know, like, you can't find probably a heavy-duty case, because they went after it, you know, when they were making the decision. Owen in particular, you know, that is technical. And, you know, when we went up and talked to the folks in Burlington, Burlington's at a point right now where every Thursday they host groups of educators from all over the country. They have a set up hour at like 9:30 on Thursdays.
It's an open door.
You know, and because they've had so many inquiries from districts that want to see what they're doing, and it's perceived that they're doing it well, that they got to the point where they just said, you know, we can't schedule all these, let's make a system out of it. And the day we were there, there probably were 6 or 7 other districts, from Maine down to New Jersey, and, you know.
Charge $20 a head.
Take those iPads.
That's what we're thinking, but yeah.
Yeah, but they, you know, I mean, that's what really is going on now in terms of, you know, people really trying to figure this out. You know, other than, you know, again, I mentioned the idea of, you know, conceptually what this means for parents, the equity piece, you know, the long-term possibility. I think there is, you know, I think at the end of next year's pilot, we would be in a position to actually make the decision, you would be in a position to actually make the decision as to whether or not it would be feasible to look at reallocating about $100,000. Now, again, I don't want to portray that as, well, it's $100,000 in savings, because clearly what you're seeing in this budget is not an increase in hardware in any substantial fashion. What you're seeing is a very substantial increase in PD to actually see if we can do this. You know, a big part of it would be from the point of view of, you know, working from where we are now through the spring, through the summer, with, you know, teams of teachers working on the material side of it, and then throughout the entire next year. But the goal would be to actually have the textbook in the pilot, and the materials being utilized, which, you know, I think is, you know, a very substantial part of the experiment. I don't think if there's anything else that is important in terms of and we've talked about them this.
No, I think the other piece too about that, I mean, so side benefits, I mean, I don't mean to minimize, but beyond cost is, I think it gives teachers ownership in it, a big piece, which is immense. Because I think, you know, as Bob said, ideally, I think our teachers would love to create their own textbooks and things, but we know, talk about that, is that a reality? How much time that is? But I think that's a good problem. I mean, we talk about, like, these are really good problems. The teachers are, to see that level of investment of opening doors and just changing views of what a textbook is. It's not just a PDF on file, the interactive capability. I mean, if you, like Bob mentioned, like CK12 or the Khan Academy, you look at that and your mind will just explode with the options that are there for learning. And I think that's the piece. And that networking piece, that side benefit, a lot of us have been wonderful for the educators. Just, and not just about the iPad, but just engaging with Pat Markin at Burlington. It's been great. It opened that door for me to communicate with him and just opening that view of, you know, never mind just liberalizing the network of security and safety, but, you know, student blogging, and that's their reality. So just opening that and teaching them how to use it and to collaborate, and it's not just about Blake Middle School, but what other schools are we engaging in and really enhancing that education, tapping into resources. There's been a lot of side benefits, but I think that's a big piece of that, is really personalizing those texts or those resources to what we want for our students and not being defined by just, well, we bought it from Houghton Mifflin, so we better use it and use these resources. That's a very narrow scope, and that's not really productive.
Now, some of the materials are, you know, basically open resource
Yeah.
English materials. So that's very straightforward. You know, so there are a good amount of, you know, if you want to see another example of what I'm talking about, you can go online and just go to Project Gutenberg, which is a very vast, well-organized repository of a lot of the famous books that you read, you know, during your education, and they're all there. You know, you can get the Adventures of Marco Polo, and I think the 451, you know, that he was showing you is, you know, it's considered right now an open resource. There's no copyright available anymore. So a lot of the English materials, that's very straightforward. On the textbook side of it, I mean, one of the, you know, the things that we're involved in the trap that we're in now is, you know, when you look at, again, what we're trying to sustain as a textbook budget is the volume of textbooks, and then the ability to actually keep these current. You know, so you might not feel that something like physical science, you know, changes, you know, in a year or two, to a great degree, right? Because granted, you know, some of the foundations of algebra, things of that nature, may not change, you know, in such a rapid fashion that, you know, you feel that you have to replace this every 3 years or so. But, you know, one of the examples that I saw online that relates to, you know, maybe physical science was, you know, there was some, I was reading about someone that's a real proponent of what I'm talking about, and they had an example of a science discovery, and it had to do with something about arsenic, which we think about as, you know, a poison, and they had discovered these arsenic-eating, you know, microbes, and you know, kind of turned the thinking on its head about, you know, that issue of how we would think of arsenic generally, that it doesn't support life in any way, right? It's a poison. But they had done this discovery, and he sent it off to several of the publishers to get their reaction in terms of, like, this was a big deal, I guess, in the science community, and, you know, got no responses from them, right? And the amount of time that, you know, if you really look at it in practical terms, that a publisher is actually going to update the publication, and then districts are actually in their cycle of purchasing, you know, going to go out and buy those new texts. You know, when you look at, you know, the average textbook budget in this country in school departments, you know, and then go and look at the copyright dates, okay, there's a significant gap. So one of the advantages of these other kinds of, you know, developed materials from open resources is it's very adaptable. You know, that you can, you know, take something that's very current and very easily, you know, make that kind of a change. You know, Apple is certainly starting to talk about going down that road. I haven't seen really a lot of superintendents yet, or a lot of districts that have embraced buying, you know, the $15, really what are leased books per year for kids. I mean, you look at it as a cost implication, there probably isn't, there are very few districts out there that actually can do that model. But, you know, Apple does have, you know, their textbooks now that they're developing and working on the publishers with. I downloaded, you know, the science one, and it's wonderful, but it's very cost prohibitive. You know, at this point, there's been a whole bit of litigation that's been playing out over whether or not there was some, you know, I don't know what the right legal term was, but, you know, whether or not there had been a deal struck between Apple and the publishers on what the price fixing, you know, collusion that might occur.
Antitrust.
Antitrust. Well, there's been lawsuits that, you know, have been filed, and my understanding is they're in the middle of trying to resolve. So, you know, there is this direction, you know, whether it's going to be with, you know, the publishers, you know, moving in this direction. Certainly, it seems to be some of the trend. The issue is the price point on what the publishers are making available is not really kind of freeing up, you know, the financial issue. So more and more people are looking at this issue, this idea of, you know, using these open resources that are available out there. And again, if you take a quick look tonight at Khan Academy, you'll be blown away about the materials that are out there.
Now, how are those open resources monitored? Like, can anyone just put something out there and?
They can, you know, so that's really where I think you've got to have, you know, teachers that are going to be really thoughtful, you know, and be supported in how they pull them together. You know, and that's the biggest argument that publishers have. You know, they make the argument that, you know, the reason that the books are so expensive is because of the work that they have to do to kind of proof and to, you know, see that, you know, they've been tested, you know, and reviewed scholarly and, you know, so on and so forth. On the other hand, you know, we know, you know, just from our conversations internally, that teachers produce right now a vast amount of material that they develop and use on their own now. You know, and you know, that's one of the things that we think is an advantage right now is that a lot of the teacher, you know, developed materials that are kind of loosely, you know, around right now could actually, you know, be structured, shared, and again, from an equity point of view, done in a more common way, you know, so that you see that teachers that are in, you know, teaching U.S. history, you know, have the ability to have the materials that they've, you know, self-developed be shared more widely across them, you know, so that kids are getting, you know, similar access to them. You know, one of the things that we think is actually going to be a positive, you know, and not too hard. You know, from talking to the folks at Burlington, that clearly is one of the things that, you know, happened real quickly is that there were, you know, teachers that, you know, in some instances have, you know, 25–50% of, you know, what they do is self-developed as it is. They find really good quality stuff, you know, and want to use it with kids. You know, so being able to put it in a software environment that kind of codifies it and lets it be more broadly distributed between teachers. You know, and the work of, you know, what I see the work of the teachers being in this is really something that, again, that Nat was, I think, trying to get at with his comments was the idea of, you know, there is value in curriculum work by teachers, you know, in the development of materials. That, you know, they need to look at the standards. They need to think about what's important to be instructed with. So on and so forth. I think if you look at that stuff tonight, you'll be, as Matt said, kind of blown away by the quality of some of what's there. It has a lot of embedded video, a lot of you know, very, you know, high quality instruction that's being supported actually by millions of dollars of a philanthropist. Gates is involved. Yep. Look at those iPads. You didn't even have to wait to go home.
We're using some of those resources now. I mean, that's the thing is teachers point kids to those directions. And kids are using them anyway. I mean, it's so vast. I mean, I was having trouble doing something on my phone. I Googled it, and all through YouTube, it's amazing how many people have times have uploaded videos on how to sync your apps or to delete your apps. It's that type of thing. I mean, it was amazing. So I was able to do that rather than get on a help phone and do all those things. Or read through Apple's webpage. I watched someone's 3-minute tutorial on YouTube and just followed it. I don't know who it was, and it worked. I mean, I think there's that. It's shifting our thought and not understanding in that manner. So we're using those, and I think that becomes our job. Same thing on that physical science text. I bet if Jason looked at that, not every piece of that text is he going to say that's the way I would have presented it. So he's got to find another resource. I think it's that kind of being taught. You know, when I taught 6th grade math, textbook wasn't, I mean, it was great, it gave them kind of a jumping off point, but I don't think that's what made the lesson. You know, I'm not giving myself that credit, but working with the teachers, all right, this is the core piece, but really it's just worksheets. We're still teaching how to do it.
You want me to get off technology in other parts of the budget?
You're gonna go on to world languages and
I am.
yeah.
Yeah, so I do want to talk about the world languages, and this is the first really good news of the budget season is we received news of a
Thanks,
$41,000.
everybody. You're welcome to come visit too, honestly, we'll open the doors, come on in.
Thank you.
We received news of a $41,000 grant from the Age Society. 11,000 of it is specifically earmarked to activities related to the exchange programs. 30,000 of it is related directly to our plan to continue to expand the language program. So that's a pretty big piece of it. I think we have roughly right now about somewhere in the neighborhood of about maybe a little under 60,000 that's related to that effort to expand the language program, and this would cover about half of that. So it's good news. Charlie and I talked about it today. We haven't made the adjustment in the budget book yet, but it's very good news in terms of helping us move forward with achieving that goal. Beyond that, as I explained, the vast majority of the increase that we're dealing with in the budget really is associated to existing personnel costs.
Okay, so I move to the Medfield School Statement next.
So I think I had mentioned generally to you that our submitted SOI did not result in us getting an invitation into the eligibility period with MSBA, which is the new process that they basically, you submit the SOI, and then after reviewing it, they decide on choosing some districts to move into kind of this initial phase of a conversation with them. That said, we're in good company. There were a total of 280 SOIs that were actually submitted in the same period that we submitted ours by 121 districts. 3 districts were invited in. So we should not feel, I had someone pull out the research for me. There were 3 districts that were invited into the MSBA eligibility period. There were 2 districts that were invited to conduct a feasibility study. There were 11 districts representing 13 projects that were authorized to actually execute a project this year. Which again, these are really small numbers. There were 3 districts authorized to execute funding projects for the MSBA Science Lab Initiative, which was a very specifically designated project. And then internally, districts that had previously been involved in being invited into the eligibility period, there were 5 different districts that moved to preferred schematic design, 3 districts that were advanced to project scope in the budget phase. So basically, there were 27 districts in the entire state that received some phase of approval. But the phase that we were looking at was really an initial SOI and being invited into the eligibility period, which is really surprising in terms of numbers. So we are in the process right now of working on the resubmission of the SOI. And actually, the entire process needs to be done again when you haven't been invited in. So they thought they were going to have information out during the month of December. That got delayed. We finally received the information in January. The window is now going to be open to sometime in mid-April, which is different than last year's dates. And the good news is we can repopulate the data into the new application electronically. So we don't have to go in and type the 90 pages or whatever it was again. We've been told we're going to be able to repopulate the new application with our original application. We need to go in, probably review it again, see if there's anything in there that, was presented in a way that, could be changed to present it better informationally. Probably, there'll be a few areas like enrollment data and stuff like that, that, we'll look at the numbers and look at those projections. But I don't expect it to be the same amount of time-consuming work that it was, to put the original report together. We do need to still get a vote of the school committee and a vote of the board of selectmen to resubmit it. So, we'll be setting up a schedule once we know that we've got the data repopulated, we've got, the process in hand. I've spoken to Mike Sullivan about it, and we really could be coming to the selectmen at some point between now and mid-April to, get a vote from the board of selectmen. Tim is working still with the town's existing building committee that's been looking at the garage and the issues related to the police and fire and park and rec, I guess, indirectly. So we've continued to have some discussions through Tim, with the folks that are looking at those projects, because there has been a lot of conversation about between Mike, myself, I think that committee and some of the other department heads about trying to be thoughtful about a capital approach, plan. Certainly, I think right now the continued priority is the garage. I know that Tim's committee was working on that pretty steadfastly at this point. There is, I think, a commitment to try to be as thoughtful as they can be about also having a broader view of this capital idea and looking at how some of these projects may be interrelated, particularly when you look at the footprint down there and how many of the buildings are in pretty close proximity to each other, and you do this with this one, what effect does it have on that one? I think is important to look at. So that's where we are.
Brings us to the superintendent search update, and you've probably seen a few things that have come home on the search. The ad has gone into Ed Week. We sent home, and to the faculty as well, similar letters that come home, we sent to the faculty for bring the search committee together. Then there's an application there to submit that, and those are due January 28th. So we're going to take a look at those once those come in. I talked to Bill Gar today at UMass, and I sent you a survey. There's a survey that's going to go out, and he's waiting for us to approve that. So we've got a couple comments, but I'm assuming we're ready to move forward with that. So I'm going to give him the approval on that one tomorrow. And then he and I are going to meet next Monday to start talking about the focus groups. And I'll probably pull Tim in there if he can join us, because that's the next step to get things going. So it's moving along. There's a lot of this upfront work that we need to do, but we're getting there. And we'll start looking at the applications that are coming in and start passing some of those on to us. So, in good shape, I think. It's going to move fast. If you saw the date, the plan is to have present a finalist to the school committee on April 15th. Move pretty quickly. Timeline's pretty aggressive, but all work.
What did you say, April 18th?
I've got it right here. I'm sorry, April 8th. April 8th. Okay, that brings us to public participation. School choice. This is something that comes up every year. We typically have not participated in school choice in the past due to enrollment and budgetary reasons, and it's been recommended this year as well we vote to not participate in school choice.
Move the superintendent's recommendation.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Which brings us to the Madeline L. Grant Scholarship Award. This year, the recipient is Gabrielle Jakes. And we've been asked to vote on things every year for the payment of the scholarship. So, Gabrielle's at Seton College, you see that she's performed very well.
Outstanding.
Outstanding, I should
Her
say.
mother should be very proud of her.
And, so we'd like to make a motion to make the payment to Gabrielle for the scholarship.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
And I always take a moment when this one gets voted to remind the public and everybody that this scholarship would not be available if it wasn't for the kindness and generosity of Madeline Grant, who was a former teacher, and left a sizable amount of money that was invested in the trust to the town and results in 2 of these scholarships being awarded annually to well-deserving kids. So
Okay, that brings us to school committee minutes. Those are yours, Chris?
Yes, I was absent for the meeting on the 15th
Oh,
of October. I mean, somebody else has to
okay.
read those.
All right. Is anybody else in position to move them or table them? No. Betsy, why don't you table that one for the next meeting and,
I have reviewed the minutes for the November 5th meeting, and I move that they be approved as submitted.
second, all in favor?
Likewise, reviewed the minutes for the November 5th executive session, and be moved that they be approved as submitted.
Second. All in favor? Aye. On the October 15th, any other thing? You could do it, sure. All right, that brings us to information sharing and other. Did you have anything?
No, we're doing a mail pageant, actually, that's really about it, but, that will be on February process. We're thinking about donating it, sorry, one idea was donating the money to, apparently, math is very can be expensive, and so we're thinking of creating a, math scholarship for student who can't,
That's a nice idea.
whose parents are having trouble paying for it or
Yeah.
something, so, that's an idea right now.
That's good, it's nice idea.
Briefly, I distributed 3 updated budget sheets to you. None of the numbers in there are different from what was distributed with the superintendent's recommendation. At your last meeting, a question was asked about the science supplies at Wheelock and what they were going to be used for. It was $2,500. The footnote has been rewritten to reflect an accurate presentation of what the $2,500 was. Essentially, it's made up of butterfly kits for $625, balancing and weighing unit workbooks for $283, weather kits and texts for $677, and a connection between their garden, Victory Garden, and their curriculum for $915. There are 2 other pages where frankly there was a typo and another small error that I caught as we were going through, and so I just reproduced those pages. But the numbers have not been altered since what you saw previously. You will see, based on what the superintendent told you about the Asian Society grant, a $30,000 reduction. We just haven't done that yet. Thank you.
I've spoken to Greg, actually, who was here earlier, and I just wanted to confirm that we're meeting on the 16th with their subcommittee.
What time of day is that being
I
held?
think it's going to be at 7 p.m. I think Kathy had talked to you.
Yeah, she didn't have a time at the time.
Yeah, 7 p.m.
Okay.
And then the 29th, the time isn't 100% certain yet. I'm guessing it's going to be around 7:15 or so.
They did send us an email today that it's at 7:15 with the warrant committee.
And that's with the full work committee. The full committee. On the 16th, I think there's 3 members that will meet with our subcommittee.
So I'm sorry, what was the second date? I was
The
gonna say?
29th,
Where are the meetings?
They'll be in town hall. I'll get you the exact location. I think the 16th may be up in our office area. The 29th likely will be down in the first floor one committee room.
Okay.
Is there an agenda for those meetings?
No. You know, I think, you know, in the past, as we've done with the subcommittee, usually earlier than this, you know, we try to present, you know, general information about it. They do have the budget, so, you know, the ability to offer, you know, answering specific questions that we have. The 29th is the full meeting with the warrant committee.
Okay.
Yeah, right now, you're scheduled to vote to make this your budget, in whatever form it may end up being that night, to be your budget. So, you know, hopefully we'd be in a position then to talk to them very directly about what they're recommending to the town. And that is our night for our open hearing. Legally, we conduct one.
2 weeks from today.
Would have to be the 28th, yeah. So legally, there's a requirement under Massachusetts state law that one meeting of